Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. Today, I've got Junaid with me.
Junaid.
Junaid, sorry. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the 5 tips on how to look good on camera without spending any money. So
Absolutely.
before we go any further, where can people get hold of you?
So you can connect me through LinkedIn right here, as well as homestudiomastery.com, or you can check out my podcast at hacksandhobbies.com.
And so what's your story? Because you look really good on video.
Thank you.
And we actually met because we were on a conference together. And
That's
I
right.
think I followed you or something. And I thought,
Hmm.
hey, this person, your background, the way that you look, everything is just so. So, what is your journey on how you got here?
That's an excellent question. So back in 2018, we were doing LinkedIn Locals, where we met people on LinkedIn locally as a networking event and got to know each other. The first time I showed up, uh, the host Rod Ferrier saw me walking around with my camera gear and I'm like recording video and with this gimbals and whatnot, and he's like, "Hey, you should talk about video." I'm like, "All right." So the next event, I talked about how to use your smartphone as a mobile video production unit. You can record video, you can edit video, you can share it on social, all from the palm of our hands. And so I did this presentation and I was like, hey, I want to create a course around it. But when I went to create a course around it, I looked around in my basement and all I saw was yellow walls. And I was like, well, this is not going to work. And I saw there was a few people that were on LinkedIn, they were creating content and they had these vinyl backdrops. I'm like, oh, maybe I can get a vinyl backdrop. So I went and got a vinyl backdrop. I put it up. It wasn't the best color. It was kind of faded. I was like, just push on through, experiment. Took me about 2 hours to set up this space in the basement where my kids play. And by the time I was done setting it up, I was like, all right, let's hit record. And then my kids walk in. It's like, hey, Dad, we're hungry. Can you feed us? And it's in the end of the night, towards the end evening. And I was like, all right, well, maybe I'll come back tomorrow and work on it. The next day, of course, we're working, commuting back to work, come back, and then the kids need the area. It just never really picked up. So I was like, all right, maybe I'll do it on the weekend. So on the weekend, I start again. I put everything together, but as soon as I started talking in front of the camera, I didn't have words. I didn't have a story to tell. I didn't have a thought process to, actually go through. So I was like, well, this is not working out because I have not only am I thinking about the cameras, the batteries, the lights, I also have to think about what am I going to talk about? What's the story I'm telling? So that's where the journey kind of started. And then fast forward 2020, everybody's working from home. I was like, hey, I get to spend some more time in my office. Maybe I can turn this around. And then as it had, I started watching a lot of people coming online, doing live streams, and Pat Flynn was one of them. He would do daily live streams for 2 hours where he's talking about all the things that he's learned and he's just giving back. And after about 2 weeks, he's a blogger as well. So he blogged about, hey, these are all the things that I'm using in my studio. And I looked around in my studio. I was like, hey, in my closet, because I am a filmmaker of past 10 years, like, hey, I have all this gear. I can totally pull this off. And a year later, the transformation of what my studio used to be became this. And I'm always tweaking stuff here, right? Like there's this one black panel that fell down. I don't know if you noticed it, but it's right next to that
No,
red.
no, no, I wouldn't. I
Right,
mean, your background looks fantastic. I mean,
right.
it's yeah.
So being in here, I see the things, but when I show up online, because I've had those 1%, 2%, 5% incremental upgrades throughout the whole year, it all compounds, and now you've got a professional looking studio. Of course, the gear the lighting, all of that helped. But you don't need all of this to get started because, like I said, even though I had all this gear, as soon as I turned the camera on, I couldn't speak. I was speechless.
So what is it that, everybody now, we've all been working from home.
Yeah.
We've kind of probably cobbled something together. So what is it that we need now to actually make us look good online? What are your tips?
Well, the number one thing you want to do is have a captivating story. Like I just walked you through a story because you asked a good question of, hey, how did I even get started? So have a captivating story, a story that can relate people to, hey, this is the trouble that I went through and I solved it. And then when you talk about that, you'll see a lot of people resonating with that relation. So a story that relates. Then you also want to have a story that shows the transformation. Oh, I used to be fat. I didn't really work out, and then I got on a bike, and then now I'm biking 150 miles a day. So that shows transformation. That shows like of course I wasn't able to show you what my studio looked like, but you could see the transformation. Wow, this looks good. So be able to show that transformation. And a story that also builds the authority and credibility. Well, how am I authorized to even say, hey, this is what you got to do? Well, I show you by just showing up, right? So it shows my authority, my credibility, and it also shows my journey. So that's what I mean by a captivating story. So once you have a captivating story, and funny thing is, it took me the longest time to figure out my story because I was like, I don't have a story. What am I going to tell people about?
Mm.
But then going through the journey of podcasting for 3 years, talking to 200 plus people, interviewing them, it started to make sense in my head, right? I started to applying those things. It just those people start rubbing off on you and you become an evolved version of yourself. So that's where the captivating story comes from. And it doesn't matter how good your video looks. Now, it does help because now people are interested to look, okay, this guy looking good. Everything is on point. There's something behind there. Like, what did he actually do? So that's my first point.
I mean, I love the way the way that you're able to look. When you look at the screen, there's none of this. I'm looking. Am I looking at the camera? That you look straight into the camera.
Yeah. So how did that come to happen?
How do you do that?
How do I do that? Number one, practice.
Right.
So initially, I didn't have the teleprompter setup that I have now. I can show you.
Okay, so you've got it. Oh, right. Okay.
Right. So I've got a teleprompter here. I've got a little screen that shows me all the things that I need to see. I've got my PowerPoint. I've got your window, all those things up here. So before I had all of this, I just had my camera sitting above my computer monitor. And I put it close enough to the top that I can just glance down. And then anytime I start talking, I want to look at the camera. So even if I had the screen turned off, I'm going to talk like this because this is our natural form. Like when we're talking to people in person, you're not going to look down and talk to them unless you're shy or something. You're going to look straight into their eyes. So that's something that I had to practice.
Right.
A ton of times.
Yeah.
Like we would do these daily Zoom calls where we would talk about our problems, talk about what we're going through. And that just gave me the practice, a space to get comfortable in front of the camera. I've been comfortable behind the camera for 30 years, right? I've been taking photos, videos. But when you're in front of the camera, there's a different part of your mind that clicks like, oh, I got to do this now. What are people going to think? I know I'm slow now, but that's what I had to do. I just had to practice.
And so you're looking into a teleprompter.
Yes.
And so a teleprompter in effect,
yes,
means that you are looking into the lens of the camera. So that Correct. It kind of forces that, doesn't it?
Yeah. So the lens is the camera sitting right behind the monitor, the glass. So as I'm looking at myself actually in the little StreamYard window, and every once in a while I'll glance over and look at you. But because the camera lens is right there, you can't really tell the difference. Like on the other side, I have my PowerPoint presentation where I'm reading off or talking about, and that's another thing that you got to learn and practice, because when you're reading off of a teleprompter, I just mentioned the word reading. We tend to read, but when you're speaking to somebody, you really want to bring in the emotion, the enunciations, the rise and fall of the words. You really want to bring it. So that took me a ton of practice as well, because initially I was like, be aware of the light. I'm reading.
Yes.
It doesn't sound right. So, and we've seen a ton of people do that on news. On the news, they're telling stories because they are so used to it. They've practiced it. So, the one thing that I tell everybody, hey, just get started. Start to think of the stories. Go back to your life. Hey, what have you really done? And we've done so many things throughout our lives. So many things help us shape to be who we are.
And so in terms of you showing that photo, that the image of you being at your desk, I mean, obviously you've been asked the question before,
Yeah.
but what lighting are you particularly using to I have a window in front of me, so I have natural light coming in.
Yes.
You're in a basement, which I guess has got no windows, so you're having to artificially light. So what are you doing with
Right.
that?
So I am in the basement. I do have two windows that are
Okay.
blocked off.
Oh, right. Okay.
I blocked them off intentionally so I could control the light and environment 24 hours a day.
Right.
Right. So no matter what time of the day, the light is going to look the same. The number two thing I did is get lighting that is daylight rated,
Right.
meaning it's got a lot more bandwidth than being so it's rated at 5,000 to 5,600 Kelvin is the light color you want, and that's going to show you your authentic self.
Yeah.
So the second point I want to mention is intentional lighting. Be aware of where the light is falling in your room, because what's happening is you might have a window in your background, you might have a window on the side. So just being aware of where the lights are coming from and how you can control it. The camera is then going to work the best that way, because camera is similar to our eyes. Anytime there's bright light, well, we tend to close down the iris on our eyes automatically. Anytime you step outside of a dark room and into a bright room, your eyes, takes a little minute to adjust. Camera does the same thing. So you want to make sure that the lights falling in your room from a window or whatever, can it be seen by camera? Now, I do have some intentional lighting in my background, which is pointed away from the camera, but it still lights up a background to create that separation. And then the third thing you want to do with intentional lighting is that forget the entire room. Can you be seen by the camera? Because if I turn on the light and have lights all over, like for example, I can demonstrate this real quick. Hey Siri, office time. Right, so this is my regular room light, like only overhead lights, and the camera can see me because I have a light up here on the ceiling, but then you also notice this harsh shadow down here, as well as the raccoon eyes, right? Because our forehead is going to cause. So have the lighting that's not directly in front of you, but a little bit higher and then raised and pointing down, similar to how the sun is. So I can turn the lights back on. Hey Siri, studio time. Hey Siri, studio time. Come on, let's go. All set. Right, so I set up these little shortcuts so I can turn on the lights in a moment's notice. Again, I'm reducing the friction that I have to go through to be able to sit in front of the camera and record content for my course, for my teaching, for whatever it is that we're doing.
I love that, because I think that we're up and we're switching on lights and stuff like that, and you've used the technology that's available. Exactly. So in this case, Siri to actually to do that and change it. and you know, it takes a couple of seconds, but hey,
Yeah,
you know, it's
yeah. It's much faster than you moving and then readjusting yourself, and So number 3 tip would be getting a decent camera. Now, a lot of the technology that we have on our phones, the webcams, the DSLRs, the point and shoot cameras, these are decent cameras. Guess what? Our smartphones have one of the highest level cameras available. And what that does is that it has the ability to adjust focus. Now, what do I mean by focus? As you notice, my background is kind of blurred, and if I bring my hand up here, my hand is going to be blurred unless it shifts the focus to
yeah,
focus on my hand. So that's some of the things that these newer smartphones have. They have lenses and focus point that they can switch around, whereas webcams from the days past, they don't have that capability. That's why many people are jumping on the Logitech Brios or the C920s or the Stream Cam. There's a ton of cameras available, but the one that we use every day can become that camera as well. I actually did a video on YouTube on how you can use your smartphone or your iPhone as a webcam for your Zoom calls.
right.
So having a decent camera is going to get you those better points in
And I
getting
guess
to
the
work.
more that you spend on the camera, the better.
Of course,
Yeah.
but
So I see
you
that you've got a digital SLR.
yes, yes. So not necessarily would it make a difference if you spend a lot more money because the technology that I'm using that's on my camera is 15 years old.
Right.
What do I mean by that? It's got a larger sensor. They're using the photographic or the angle of views, the depth of field technology that's been around since photography has been around.
Mm.
So it's just a matter of bringing that image from a higher sensor into your computer. So a camera that's 7 years old will work perfectly fine at a lower cost for yourself as well.
Good.
So
So
decent camera.
I mean, cameras are important. I use the I've actually got a new iMac.
Yes.
You know, it's like brand new, which
Oh
has got all
yes.
kinds of machine learning in it.
Yes.
And we were on a call when as soon as I got it, where the rest of the team were using, even they were using webcams
Yeah.
like that one, which is a you know £100 webcam, which is a good
Yeah.
webcam. Except because of the machine learning and that they've got within this iMac, the
Yes.
picture and the focus and that
It's
is fantastic.
it is. Yeah.
But you know, things get better over time, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's adequate. I mean,
Yeah.
um, in terms of the using that as a webcam.
Absolutely. So we talked. So the 5 points, just to run them up. We had having a captivating story, intentional lighting, decent camera. So the next one is having excellent audio. Right. People's got to be here, got to be able to hear you, and that's why audio is important. And that's why even blind people can follow and live in the world because they take that sound.
So I've got one of these.
Mm-hmm. One of these
Um,
guys are excellent.
well, it's the one that most people, if you go to most podcasters, they usually
Yes.
say that's the it's a blue something or other. Yeah.
Yep. The Blue Yeti
Yes, the one.
is the one. So here's
And
why
it's very directional as well.
it's directional. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's got a pretty cool way to switch the polar patterns on it. So it has 4 different polar patterns. You can set it for different environments. It works good. So why do I say excellent audio? Because high quality audio actually makes you sound smarter. Some people rated a physicist's talk as 19.3% better when they listened to it in high versus low audio quality. And they also thought that he was smarter and liked him more. So think about that, right? So audio really makes the world go around. In fact, good audio also enables automation. Because if you have good audio, the software can then translate and transcribe your audio into text for closed captioning for communications, and I mean, the first thing our kids, when they're born, they're inside the stomach, is they pay attention to sound. So sound is very, very important. So even if your video is not as high quality, if you have a high quality sound, people will be attracted to that. And the last piece is personalized background, because it ties everything together. It brings in, hey, what are you really interested in? Brings in your personality, enables the viewer to stop and listen. Like, oh, what is that little thing in that shot? Oh, that looks like an Iron Man, or that looks like a Star Wars theme. It also captivates and stops the audio people from scrolling past to the next video.
Yeah, I've got a number of things to go up on the wall. I've just inherited a musical instrument from my great grandfather.
Nice.
Which is it's a one-string fiddle, and so it's actually quite strange as an instrument. And I've got to get it fixed and then put it up on my wall, because I want it. It's one of those things where people are going, so what's that?
Yeah.
And I think that's it's coming.
Nice. Can't wait to see it.
So the other thing of all these, thank you for sharing those 5 things. The other thing is that I wanted to talk about also just quickly was about the fact that you're a beekeeper.
Yes.
So how did you get into beekeeping?
That's an excellent question. With another story, of course. In 2012, we went to an allergist. I knew my kid had some allergies, and he mentioned, hey, local honey is really good for your seasonal allergies. I'm like, okay, local honey. Connecting the dots over the time, a friend of mine was like, hey, can I borrow your GoPro headcam? I'm getting these beehives for my farm, and I want to capture this whole... I'm like, what? You can buy bees? I'm like, no, I'm renting the bees so they can come and pollinate my farm. I'm like, wow, okay. Next, second step. Third step, I saw this podcast, I saw this Kickstarter campaign called Flow Hive. These blokes out of Australia, father and son, researched for like 10 years in building a hive that's really easy to harvest honey. You just stick your jar under it and you just turn the tap and you have honey on tap. So I was like, whoa, that's amazing. So and it got me into thinking about beekeeping. And then in 2017, we bought a house. We had a huge land in the backyard. I'm like, now's the time. So I jumped in, found some local beekeepers, took my course. And then as I took my course and finished the course, I was like, hey, I want to document this journey. And that's where the podcast started. And then so the first season of my podcast, Hacks and Hobbies, is all about beekeeping.
Fantastic. So you've actually got some honey there, because you popped out and got some, didn't you?
I've got some honey. Here's my honey bottle. It's got a little funky label on it, but sweet raw honey. I've got a little site on it. You can purchase the honey if you want. It's locally harvested here in Northern Virginia, and it's been a lovely learning experience.
I said to you previously, my parents kept bees for 10 or 15 years, so it became kind of part of the. I remember extracting. So we used to take the supers off.
Yep.
And have to take the cones out and then put them in a machine and basically turn handle and extract the honey.
Yes. Yes.
Great
It's
fun.
Amazing. Yeah, it's a ton of fun. Kids love it because they can just, oh, what is this dripping? They can just eat right off of it.
Yeah. And it's sweet and it's like it's an amazing thing where people can actually get connected to both food but understand how it's actually created.
Absolutely. It's amazing.
And I often see the obviously the other thing that we should point out is that the bees is actually a society run by women.
Yes, it is.
There's actually very few males and the males only have a particular function.
Yeah.
And once they've actually done that function, they get thrown out.
Exactly. They're just the propagation of the entire species.
Absolutely. Apart from that, the whole thing is run by women, which is so. I often see that my father always used to say, I say the girls are out flying today.
Yeah. That's like all those worker bees are female.
Mm,
and the queen, the control. It's just really fascinating just to learn about all of that. And
mm.
just this weekend, I had my uncle over, and we had this guest over, and they were like asking about bees, and I'm like giving all this information, and he's like, "Wow, man, you know so much. We should have been paying for this." Like it's what it when you're really passionate about something and you start talking about it, people really you know tune in and listen. Like, whoa, that's really interesting.
I mean, I'd love to do it. I don't have the room and there there's some places nearby which
Hmm.
people have threatened to take me there and get me
Okay.
involved, but I haven't done it yet. But maybe when I get a little bit older, something
Well,
in my retirement or something.
what's funny is that they don't take a lot of room,
Mm,
and I had visited this gentleman. He actually kept a beehive inside this house with some clear panels,
right,
but then it had a little tube going to the outside.
right,
So the bees would come from the outside, come
yeah,
inside, and do the business inside
mm,
the house, and you could like
mm,
see the whole process.
mm,
But
wow,
I mean, he had other hives, of course,
mm,
but I was like, just to see that indoors
mm,
and not have to worry about the space, it was pretty
mm,
interesting.
mm. Thank you so much for coming on today and
Absolutely.
sharing your story and your 5 tips in terms of how to look good on camera without spending any money. I mean, it's a fascinating thing.
Yeah,
It's something that all of us have got to get a hold of.
absolutely. 100%.
So, thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you
on
so much,
today
Tim.
and spending time with us today.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.